In this video, we're going to explore big data, what it is, what we can do about it to make better decisions, what we need to be concerned about also as consumers, and what businesses are using this the most. So, as a bit of background, many of the activities that we do every day, especially anything we do that relates to the internet, leaves a digital footprint. And that digital footprint is recorded, collected, and that in itself leads to a lot of data, which is what we refer to as big data. So from a business or marketing perspective, we talk about our internal and external types of big data. The internal can be either data from sales from a register, or various types of sensor data, while external could be things such as, so obviously external to the business, such as, for example, data on social media. But what we often talk about is structured and unstructured big data. So when it's structured, it means that we can make meaningful business decisions based on it. So it has been organized, put into spreadsheets, and we can run statistical analysis on it, and as such make reasonable business predictions and decisions. While the unstructured data is just stuff that's floating around there on the internet. It could be audio, video, images, social media material, or anything else. And according to this paper for this week, about 95% of all the big data is unstructured. So of course this is then the challenge for marketers. How do we make unstructured data structured? So we're going to look at that a little bit as well further on in this video. So we're producing, as I said, an enormous amount of data every day, and up until about 2003, according to Eric Schmidt from Google, we produced about 5 exabytes of data up until that point, and now we produce about that every 2 days, although that was 2010, so it's probably even more now, but it's disproportionate the way that we produce data up until around the turn of the millennia, and to the amount that we are producing data now. So we can look at this in a little bit more different types of context here. So a company called Domo, they put out an annual infographics called Data Never Sleeps, that is basically every minute on the internet of the year in question, we produce this amount of data. So YouTube users upload, for example, 500 hours of video. We view 1 million hours of streaming every minute. So these numbers are large and hard to grasp. We send 231.4 million emails. Sometimes I feel like I receive all of them every minute on the internet. So looking at all this data, of course, is then collected and stored, which produces an enormous amount of big data. So when we talk about big data, we typically talk about data sets that are so big that they are typically beyond what can be captured and stored and managed. And back in 2001, we operated with a 3V framework of what it is, referring to volume, velocity, and variety. A volume, of course, referring to the actual magnitude of the data. And as a marketer, we need to think about, do we have servers that can store large amounts of data? And then, of course, you got to consider why would you store it? Why would you need it? And the velocity of it has to do with the speed and at what it's coming at us. And if it is, for example, location-based data that's been collected based on where consumers are with their mobile phones, then that data needs to be generated. It needs to be recorded, generated, and be able to be used relatively quickly, especially if the purpose is to target people directly when they're in a shop. So that's referring to the velocity, and the variety has to do with the different types of data and how we can put these things together. So, for example, if you have advertising campaigns or events that's happened, and you want to see how that corresponds with how people talk on social media, for example, then you need to have a way to record and manage and transfer different types of data into one consistent structure. So later on, we now have 3 additional V's that has to do with the veracity, the variability or complexity of the data, and also the value of it. So most type of big data is considered to be low value density, typically such as data from social media. There's a lot of clutter, a lot of irrelevant things that goes on there, and therefore difficult to extract the things that you need and disregard the ones or the parts that are not. And with the variability or complexity, that refers to the peaks and troughs of the data, so that things can come a lot at the same time, and then there could be periods of relative silence, such as around particular events, particular things that happen externally. There can be peaks of social media data, for example, and so that needs to be managed as well. And in terms of the veracity, that has to do with the reliability of the data as well. So, for example, customer sentiments on social media are quite often uncertain of nature, especially in shorter snippets like on Twitter, for example. So it would require human judgment. So you collect the data, but then in order to structure it and make sense of it, it would require some sort of human judgment. So in many ways, it's then better to leave it to the expert, so to speak, to deliver data to you that has already been structured. But nevertheless, it's good as a marketer to have a little bit of an understanding that the vast majority of data is unstructured, and when it's coming to use and can be used for marketing purposes, it needs to be cleaned and it needs to be structured. So there are some ways that we can make use of unstructured data, and some of the things that's often used is the machine learning approach. Big companies, and I'm talking the real big ones like Google, Facebook, or should I say Alphabet and Meta, and Amazon, that's using algorithms and machine learning in its promotion or in its search engines and promotion based targeted ads. So this is the algorithms learning from behavior of consumers and then transferring the data sets into prediction algorithms about what people will do next. Other ways to do it is to use, like if you want to do it yourself, so to speak, you can use various types of rule-based approaches or manual categorization of data. So then you need to first of all transfer data into text, and then you can use text analysis programs such as Luke, for example, LIWC, which is a software that allows you to search for patterns within text, and you can then code text according to emotion words, for example, and then extract meaning from that. It's an approach that's relatively common these days in academic marketing research. But of course, there's plenty of service-based ways that you can get this done for you. There's also, especially in terms of social media, there are dashboard applications that will run a lot of the sentiment analysis on your behalf, and you can pay for a subscription and then get it out. The alternative, of course, is to do it yourself, which can be quite time-consuming, and you will potentially also need some supporting software to get it done. So unless you have access to enormous databases and sophisticated algorithms and machine learning techniques that can crawl through enormous amounts of big data and extract meaning from it, you basically need to figure out some way to convert things into text in order to be able to analyze and make meaning of it. So if you have audio or video data, transcribing and making it into text is the way to go in order to be able to analyze. There's heaps of free services such as Otter, for example, which is a digital transcription service where you can put in audio or video material and it will translate it into text for you. If you do interviews on Teams or Zoom, then you can also get transcripts straight away. But yeah, so when you have things in a text format, you can run it through software to see if or when and how and to what extent people are talking positively or negatively about your business, for example. You can see where and how often you're mentioned in social media and those type of things. There are, of course, heaps of services that do these type of things for you. So social media analytics is big business, and there are many commercially available platforms. Click back to the video about social media or about analytics and social media, and there's a few examples there where data will be, so it will be like a dashboard where data will be scraped from social media, and it will be made from unstructured to structured for you, which is what you want, because that's what you can make decisions from. There are a few publicly available types of already structured big data. Google Trends is great, where you can see what's trending on Google, so you can see what searches and what people are actually, and the popularity of different types of search. Google also have a lot of public data available that's been structured. Gapminder is a fascinating statistic and statistics site where you can look at loads of and play around with loads of different statistics. Of course, there's the Australian Bureau of Statistics as well. So what quite happened, or what has commonly happened with usage of big data, and we talk about it, is quite often in terms of how the likes of Google, Amazon, Facebook is using big data, because these are the only companies that really takes great use of collecting enormous amounts of consumer touch points until to the extent where they are able to predict to staggering accuracy what people may be doing next. So that's that idea of the segmentation of one, and quite often it's sold to us as consumers as being personalized, because personalized advertising sounds like something positive rather than manipulative. A huge part of Amazon's success is their algorithms, their recommendation engine algorithms, and the capacity of Amazon to collect data from consumers and be able to target with products that that have similar behavior to the consumer at hand, and they will be able to target direct products that will fit that particular user. And the more we use the service, the smarter it gets, and the better it will get in predicting exactly what you will be buying next. And here lies the dilemma. So, as the marketing industry will want us to think, is that personalized product offering is great because it knows, the machine knows us and it knows what we want, and it can give us that stuff right when we want it. But on the other hand, as a consumer, is that always fair? Because the machine has then figured out exactly when we are at our most vulnerable and are then able to target us exactly at that point in time. So the algorithms may figure out, for example, when you will be most likely to do online purchases. It can figure out whether or not you've been out drinking earlier in the night or day, and then you come home and you flick on your computer and it knows that now you're in that sweet spot. And then once you sober up and a few days later, crap starts showing up in the mail from Amazon because it knew that you would be shopping when you were vulnerable. The other, of course, consumer issue with big data is the filter bubble effect, which refers to that. So let's say, for example, that you get your movie, most of your movie advice from your friends on social media, and your friends on social media will have similar interests to you, and as such, you only end up watching movies that will be very similar to what your friends are watching, and therefore you're becoming increasingly insular into a small group of people that you base all your decisions on, and your exposure to something outside of your little bubble is diminished as a result. And that is a real concern with big data and with ongoing recommendations and manipulations of consumers. So I'm sure you've heard the saying that there is nothing free on the internet. If you're not paying for it, that means that you are not the customer, you are the actual product. Although according to Zuboff's book here called Surveillance Capitalism, which I thoroughly recommend, it's even worse than that. You are not the product as such. Your behavior, whatever you do online, are inputs into real products. So the machine knowing who you are, your age, your gender, your interests, your behaviors, your medical history, whatever it is, all that goes into the machine, and that behavioral surplus is then being used and manipulated into build products that are then sold to the highest bidder in order to take control of your future and manipulate your behavior in the next instance. That is the argument in Zuboff's Surveillance Capitalism book, which is a fascinating read. So I recommend write something in your blog about the ethics of big data usage, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion in class on this topic.